Sounds right.
Welcome to the 109th episode of the Flip Learning Network podcast. I'm your host, Troy Cockrum, along with co-host Joan Brown.
Right.
The Flip Learning Network podcast is brought to you by the EdReach Network, bringing educators a voice, a big voice. So tonight on the show, we are going to talk about an issue that Joan and I have concerns about, or it's certainly one of my pet peeves, is copyright concerns and how to teach it to students and what teachers should be concerned about as far as copywriting material, using copyrighted material in either teacher prepared presentations or student work. And Joan and I come from a different background than quite a lot of teachers, is that we're both from have media experience in our background, and so maybe that makes us a little bit more sensitive or alert to copyright infringement than other people.
Possibly. Um, I don't know. Were we concerned about it when we were in broadcasting? I don't know. I don't think we were, because everything we did, we created ourselves. I don't think there was ever an opportunity to take something unless it had, at least at my job, that had already passed through the arts department and the image department to make sure that it was an original work. Something that we don't have the luxury of at school every time.
Well, I know as music, especially the job that I did was producing a lot of original work. We had to use music libraries that we had already purchased the licensing to, and many clients would ask for copyrighted songs, and we would just say we can't do that. We can't put that in there unless you want to pay thousands or maybe even millions of dollars to get those rights. Now there's certain, as far as I was also part of a news organization, and there's certain, you have certain, you can use a certain amount of copyrighted material for news purposes, but then if those little bumpers and things that people play songs just for entertaining purposes, coming into the show or going out of the show or going out of a segment or something like that, the station had to pay the rights to use those songs.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, the rights were all paid for by any broadcaster. So then you run into teachers think that maybe the school has purchased a music library. Maybe they've got a CD, and teachers are thinking then, oh well, it's good to go. We can use this freely, but not necessarily the case. Just because you bought it doesn't mean you can just use it, which is unfortunate, but the fact of life. So I think what our show we're going to talk about mostly is, cutting to the chase for teachers. Why is it more of a concern now than it was, and then how do we get this across to students in a meaningful way, in a simplistic way, because we can't take all of our class time navigating the copyright laws. So
Right.
first of all, why is it more of a concern now, Troy?
Well, I think it's more of a concern now because it's so much easier to collect and obtain copyrighted material without any sort of buffer to say this is copyrighted, don't use it. And a lot of the laws, now the laws are catching up to the internet, but a lot of the law, for the longest time, like the copyright laws were written mainly in, I believe, 1984, and so that was how the music industry was really fighting the copyright laws, because they were written with the audio cassette in mind, and then when people started mass distributing them over the internet and saying, well, I own the song, I can do that, then it became an issue. And so I think that's why it's become a bigger issue. But one of the things I kind of wanted to talk about too is, students always say, why should we be concerned if we're just putting this out to our classmates, why should we be concerned? And you know, my belief is if we want our students to be producers of content, we should get them to respect other producers of content. But you know, when I worked in media, and I'm sure you heard the same, some people would say, well, who's gonna know that we use this? And the response, we're going to turn you in. Well, students don't have competitors to turn them in, so the likelihood of you getting caught, per se, in a classroom is very, very, very minimal. So why should we be concerned?
So I think I was mentioning my little lesson I did. Now, I used to teach K through 8. So some of the younger kids, this was a very hard concept. And I would simply draw on my whiteboard a school. And I would say, we're inside the school. And everything we do inside the school is practice for what we're going to be doing outside the school. And one of the things we need to practice is following the laws. You know? And so one of the laws is copyright. And for the very young, my exercise was one in which caused outrage, I'll be honest with you. Every student drew a picture on a paper, and I asked them to write their name on it. Then I asked them to exchange it with their partner, and I told them, erase that name and put your own. And we talked about how that felt. And for them, that got home the idea of being an owner of something that was, you know, they had created. And that was something that I needed that lesson to be learned early on. So that was my kindergarten first graders that we did that lesson with. So then every time we talked about whether it was producing a PowerPoint or a video, we talked about who made that beautiful picture you're using, you know, and that would help because they go, oh yes, we want to make sure we write their name on that paper, you know, and make sure they get the credit. And so that was always the important part of a lesson that really wasn't extreme, but it was enough. Then, of course, later on, you have to get them into the whole idea of what goes on in reality now online is digital rights management. And I know you've been involved in that, but YouTube may be the key to at least exposing this to the public, but other companies use digital rights management as well as YouTube. And if you're a teacher and you're unfamiliar with this, there's a wonderful TED Talk, and it was done by, I believe her name is Margaret Gould, am I right? Margaret Gould Stewart, and she's the head of YouTube Experience, and she explains how they use a digital process to identify copywritten material. And, you know, they can do this with music, they can do it with video and images, they can do it to some extent with words as well, where they're using computers to scan the material and instantly tag it as being something that was copywritten. And so the companies, all of the major record labels all have an agreement with YouTube as to what will happen when there is a violation. Even individual artists can have separate contractual agreements with YouTube as to whether or not that needs to be instantly taken down, whether or not the person just needs to be notified, whether or not they're going to send a cease and desist letter, you know, all those things. And it can be as innocent as a kid just doing a lip dub of their favorite song. And they're like, hey, why was it taken down? I don't understand.
There's a lot there.
I said quite a bit.
Yeah, let's talk about YouTube for a little while, because that's, I think, the biggest thing there. I did have a student who was making a video on poetry and read a poem in the video, and the video got dinged for copyright infringement and was pulled down. And all the student, I mean, the words did appear on the screen, and the student read some of the words, and somehow that triggered the logarithm or whatever they have that does that. And so, you know, YouTube gets, YouTube is very aggressive in their copyright infringement. It's almost you're guilty until you can prove you're innocent. And I've had a few different videos hit for copyright infringement for different reasons, and so then you get a very, what I believe is just a letter to, this video is going to appear on YouTube, so I hope they don't actually listen to it and say and come after us. But you get a strongly worded email that says this is an infringement on copyright, and it gives you some choices. Now, sometimes like you said, the artist or whoever holds the copyright has an agreement with YouTube that it's just associated content. So then they'll run ads on your video, and they get the proceeds from the ads and not you. And so sometimes they'll say, yeah, go ahead and use our song all you want, but here's what it's considered associated content then. But then you have the right to say to YouTube, no, I have the copyright, or I'm allowed under the copyright laws to use this material, and then YouTube will leave it up unless the copyright holder pursues it further. So that's kind of the steps that they go through, but I feel like the emails they send you are so strongly worded that they scare most people into just taking the video down.
Right. But many people have been successful in putting up a lot of copywritten material, and I think my students get frustrated with that because they say, why is this one there, but I can't put mine up, it won't stay. And my answer is simply that somebody has gone to the trouble of making the argument. And
well, the other one that I hear though on the opposite side of it is that a lot of the video game companies would like they have kids who, people who make videos of them playing that game, and YouTube knocks it as copyright infringement. And once it pulled down, then the video game companies see it as free advertising, and they want it to stay up.
Yeah, the number one YouTubers are the ones that are demoing games. All of them, the ones that have millions of subscribers. Yes. So
there's kind of a back and forth there about how YouTube or Google is being too aggressive with YouTube, and some of the video game companies are saying, stop it. We don't want you to be that aggressive, but who knows where it's going to end up. And then one question I get from a lot of my students too. So what happens if we violate copyright? Do we go to jail, or do we get fined? They're like, what is the process if you are found that you've infringed on copyright? Do you know that process, Joan?
As far as what's going to happen to a minor,
what happens legally?
Legally, you have to have a cease and desist first.
Right. Pretty much, they send you a cease and desist. If you cease and desist, that's the end of it. Unless you profited greatly off of it. But if you just did it for a student project that you didn't profit at all from, and they didn't lose any profit from, then the cease and desist, you stop. That's the end of it. If you don't stop after the cease and desist, then it gets a little bit hairier. But I assure the kids, you're not going to go to jail.
Right, and remember, it's civil law. If you are sued, that's not. There's no jail involved.
Yeah. So and I guess. I think, in the heyday of trying to hit people up for illegally downloading music and videos, some people may have went to jail. I'm not sure if they did or not, or if they just paid huge fines. But, it's a hard process to prosecute. It's a hard process.
Right.
It's usually not financially beneficial for the copyright holder to pursue it, and so that's why it's a matter of teaching the students it's just the right thing to do, whether you're going to get caught or not.
Right. And then to keep in mind, and I've always taught this, is that someday you're going to work for a company where it's not just you as an individual anymore, it's the entire company that you're representing. And those are bigger fish. And yes, they will sue them. And so you're taking a whole company, to court simply because you were too lazy to find something that was usable. And I want to give YouTube some credit, because where they've gotten tighter on the copyright, they've also produced a whole library for people to use freely, and it's good. I'm in my YouTube account, so I was kind of looking at it. I don't know if I want to screen share, but underneath the new Creator Studio, when you click on your icon in the right-hand corner, you'll see a thing that says Create on the left, and there's a whole audio library, and it's thousands, and it's well tagged so that you can search it and find the right style music that you want. You can download that to your personal computer if you want and just use it for anything. It doesn't have to be just YouTube. But if you go ahead and put it on a video and upload it, you will never have a copyright infringement. It is there for you to use. They've also got the whole Creative Commons option as well. When you're in the editor, you can add anything that's out there on YouTube that has the Creative Commons licensing. You can add it to your own videos and splice it in. So they've tried to make this work for people, and especially students. I point them to that audio library right away, and I go, listen to some of this. It's not bad. It's good music. It works well with videos. It's got a lot of different moods. Try it. And then they're usually okay with it once they get into it.
And that's, you brought up Creative Commons, and I mentioned earlier some of the laws were out of date, but the Creative Commons came out in 2001. I just looked it up to confirm, and it's sort of a license. It's a, it was a license kind of created between free to use and not able to use. Is people produce content that they say you can use for free, just credit it. Is kind of what Creative Commons kind of falls in between the what you have to pay for and what is absolutely 100% free. And so that's that's what, when we say Creative Commons, it's usable, but it's usable with the caveat that you credit where you received it from.
And one thing that's interesting about crediting Creative Commons is you have to also include what type of Creative Commons license it is. So I would start, if I were a teacher and I really was confused by this, I would go to YouTube and search up Creative Commons. There's about 4 excellent videos that go through the explanation of what it is, and they do talk about the different levels of licensing there. And the beauty is, the most liberal license, of course, is one where you can share it out, you can modify it, you can alter it in any way you wish and use it for commercial or non-commercial purposes. And the main thing is that you tell people, when you're using Creative Commons, you tell them what license that one held. So, for example, let's say I'm going to go, I need an image. One of the things I would do is go to the creativecommons.org website, and if you put the search.creativecommons.org in front of it, you're going to be able to search for pretty much anything at Flickr, let's say, that is under a Creative Commons license. And then the beauty is places like Flickr give you the actual attribution that you need to use. You can copy and paste the attribution, the crediting, right there. So you're not in question, oh, I don't even know what to type. I don't know the author's name. I don't know. It gives it to you right next to the image. So you're able to easily do this with kids and say, hey, we're going to use these sites to find images, and we're going to go and grab the actual attribution that's necessary with each image. And then they don't have to think a whole lot about, oh, how do I need to write an author's name? Do I need to write the whole website and stuff like that?
And something to think about too is if you produce images or you produce videos,
Mm-hmm.
don't. I mean, the default settings on YouTube are not Creative Commons. Um,
Mm-hmm.
it's all rights reserved. So
Mm-hmm.
you have to actually change. So if you have some videos that you don't mind other people using, you need to remember to change those to the Creative Commons licensing so people can access those. And that's another thing to have students kind of think about. How 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 creative or how much did you work on this? What kind of rights do you want to do you mind giving away all the rights, or is this valuable that you might be able to make some money off of and you want to retain those rights and things like
Mm-hmm.
that? So encouraging people who post a lot of photographs or videos to take the time to set those settings as well.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. It's something that I emphasize all the time is to the more people that put things out in Creative Commons, the more we're going to be able to share. And
Yeah.
hopefully people will be producing more of that. It's not something because it's young. You notice 2001 because it's still young. There aren't as many out there. Now I'm a history teacher, and one of my favorite, of course, is public domain. And you can get a lot of wonderful historical photos in the public domain without worrying a whole lot about anything except the attribution part of it. Um, so if you want to go finding at Wiki Commons, you'll find some public domain images, but also a lot of our government websites have a ton of public domain images. There are websites like Public Domain Archive and so forth. There's just so many, and I think from a history perspective, if you're having them do projects, they would be able to find plenty out there in the public domain. No trouble at all.
And yes, the public domain is once usually after a copyright holder has been dead for 50 years, I believe, on songs, and 25. I don't remember all the years, but there's a certain amount of time that after the creator or the copyright holder dies, then it's not immediately, but it's a certain amount of time afterwards it becomes in the public domain and allowed for anybody to use.
Right.
And one of the things I always, like when my students would read Call of the Wild, I would explain that this book's over 100 years old. It's in the public domain. You could go online and download it for the text for free. I said the only thing I would show them like 7 or 8 different covers, and I would say these companies put their own cover on it and then sold it, and they're in essence just selling the cover because they don't have the right to sell the text. And so one question I always had is how can Apple sell Call of the Wild, the text of the book, as an iBook when all it is public domain text? And maybe they don't anymore. I don't know. I haven't looked recently, but that's what I explained to the kids. There's certain books you can just go online and find the full text, and there's nothing illegal about printing the domain text.
Absolutely, and that's something where if they're getting quotes, it makes it kind of nice too. But if we're kind of focusing and we're trying to a little bit on digital media because
right.
I think teachers do a fine job of teaching inline citations for quotes or taking verbal text.
Intellectual property.
We're looking for intellectual property, and that just becomes that much vaguer to students in general. I'm going to go back to public domain just because I didn't mention these, but some of my favorites, the National Archives, almost every photo there is public domain, and then our Park Service has almost all of their photos, which are beautiful photos, including Ansel Adams photos, are all public domain there at the Park Service. So if you're looking for something that's going to give you a beautiful background image, you can't beat the national parks. Now, music is a little more challenging But I have found, other than the YouTube library, there are some good sites. Purple Planet is one that I like the search engine on. And, you know, again, you still got to give attribution. You still have to tell the artist and make sure that you're giving credit. But it's my understanding that if you were to use something and it was dinged for copyright, then that's your argument to YouTube, is that, however, I put the credits at the end for this music. And as soon as you tell them that you've put the credits, then you're usually okay, as long as it's in either public domain or it's a Creative Commons license that you've given at the end of the video. So, as you and I both know, there's the whole fair use argument.
Right.
And what I'm saying is now there's the attribution argument as well. You know, these are arguments in court to protect you, to say, hey, I was trying to apply all the copyright laws that you have given me, and I was doing my best to prove that it was not my material. And that's the main thing. I think in the end, if you go through the efforts to give credit, even if it's at the end scrolling credits, you've put forth the effort, and they're going to realize that at pretty much any site.
Fair use, I like that you mentioned that as well. I'm going to read off the reasons for fair use. Or actually, it's the considerations for fair use. So what the judge would take into consideration when they're determining if you actually have fair use to use it.
Mm-hmm.
If it's of a commercial nature or not. That's the first criteria. Now, that doesn't mean if it's not of a commercial nature, it's necessarily automatically fair use, but you have a little bit more leeway on fair use if it's for educational purposes. The nature of the creative work. That's the second criteria of fair use, and I believe that's what kind of medium it is and things like that. The amount or substantiality of the proportion in relation to the copyrighted work as a whole. So if you use 4 seconds of a song, you probably fall under fair use fairly easily, as opposed to if you use 2 minutes of the song. And the effect of the potential market value of the copyrighted work. So if you caused them to lose money or you gained money from that, then that's another. So those are the things of fair use. Now there's also news fair use. You know, there's reasons of parody.
Right.
That's how Saturday Night Live can use a lot of their things, because it's for parody purposes.
And Weird Al, he gets away with it.
Yeah.
Although he does get permission. I've heard he asks every single one of his artists for permission.
Right. Because he's had to. I mean, he's been through court quite a bit with some different people. So I think he's certainly much more careful now than he was early on. But yeah, he falls, and he's won. I believe all his cases. I don't quote me on that, but I believe all his cases he's won because of the parody argument.
Right.
In commentary, that's if you're a movie reviewer, you can show a certain amount of the movie as you're reviewing it, because you're allowed commentary on it and things like that. So there are fair uses. But the one, when it says educational purposes, my students say, well, we're using it for class, that's an educational purpose, and I'm like, it's a gray area. It's a gray area.
I have a question for you, Troy, just because I do not know the answer. If you post something on YouTube that is unlisted, just the link, is it still scrutinized for copyright in the same way?
It is not,
Okay.
because I do have some videos unlisted posted to my account that have copyrighted music that I have not received any kind of copyright notice on.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's only when it becomes public that then
Right.
it becomes. And now I'm only speaking from memory on that. I didn't
Okay.
double check that, but I know when I have students make a video for whatever reason that I'm posting, that maybe I'm sending it out to parents or something, and I know it has copyrighted music, I always put it as unlisted, and I haven't had trouble with those videos.
Right.
Um, so
Good. So I think that's probably why I haven't been dinged on a few of them that I've used some NSYNC music or something like that, and sure enough, it's because I keep them unlisted mainly because it's a small audience that I'm sending it to anyway.
yeah,
If something's public, it's because I'm trying my best to share that out with as many people as possible. But you can keep it fairly limited with unlisted, and
right. I have seen, now that I think about it, I have seen ads appear on videos that I have as unlisted. In the,
uh,
my YouTube channel it's monetized so that I have more options as far as how I upload things but I don't monetize any of my videos.
mhm,
I don't place ads on any of my videos.
mhm.
So when I have a video that shows up with an ad on it, I know there's something fishy going on. So maybe that's how if it's an unlisted video, they just add ads to it, and that's the way they get it. I don't know.
It's quite possible. I do want folks, if they're curious about it, YouTube has done a wonderful job of putting together an entire site devoted to copyright and explaining copyright on YouTube, so that it's easier for people to understand. So if you just Google that, YouTube copyright, you will get to their site, and they have some, videos that are for students to look at, and they have some for adults, and they get as in depth as you wish. My final lesson to students is, and I encourage this with everything, is create it yourself. Whatever the photo is you want, you take it. Whatever the music is you want, either use one of the sites or, make your own music.
Hmm.
There are sites out there. GarageBand is a great way to get a beat, and all you need is a nice beat background, and you're good. Simple things like that. But as far as the number of places where you can draw or create your own logos or do what you want to do online now is so extensive. It's really tough for me to believe that a kid wouldn't be able to produce their own, and especially video.
The other thing to keep in mind too is websites like Fiverr.
Hmm.
I've gotten the voiceover on our intro is just somebody on Fiverr. I paid $5 for it, and it's professional audio. I mean, it's professional audio. She gave me the copyright to it when I purchased it from her,
Nice.
but it only cost $5. Whereas I know 10 years ago, if I had tried to buy that same voiceover, it would cost $100 or more. I mean, it's so you can get some nice quality created material for $5. So if they want to add some professionalism to a project they're doing, they can still find, I wouldn't tell students just go out and spend money, but if they really, really wanted to, they could find it out there even for pretty darn cheap.
Well, I do run a video club, and I really encourage them to get involved with talking to their parents about what their presence is going to be. If they create a YouTube channel, I want the parents involved in seeing it,
Hmm.
looking at everything that is uploaded, making sure they see it first before it goes out there, because I know we're talking about copyright, we're talking about laws, but also the digital footprint part of this for kids is important. They do make a lot of silly videos, and they like to upload them right away. And
Yeah.
mine is all about, no, let's make something quality before you publish it, so that you're proud of that, and that you're going to be able to look back on that in 5-10 years and say, yeah, I did make that. Yeah, I was only 12, but it's not bad for 12. And
Right.
that way, at least they're proud of everything that they do.
another thing to think about is I had a student. She created a YouTube account using her Google Apps, her school Google Apps account,
Mm-hmm.
and she uploaded a video, and it was a wonderful video, to that account. She graduated last year, and about a month ago, I was wanting to use that video for another project that I was working on, and I went to the link that I had for it, and her account had been shut down because the school had shut down her Google Apps account.
Mm-hmm.
And so I emailed her and said, "Do you still have this video?" And she didn't still have it
Oh
because
dear.
she thought it would be on YouTube.
Right.
And so it was a lesson learned that control your account if you want it to be on YouTube
I
forever.
think
It
too.
was just not something she thought about. She knew she was going to lose her Google Apps account, but she just didn't think that it just didn't cross her mind that that would mean she would lose that video.
Um, I
So
I totally understand that now. I have heard at least some rumors that the Google Apps for Education accounts are going to move toward unlimited storage. And if that's the case, storing videos there is going to be easy. And of course, you can liberate those at the end. You know, when you're done with a Google Apps for Education
right,
account, you can get all that content downloaded to a hard drive pretty easily. And that way you can walk away with your entire portfolio of schoolwork.
right,
That's something that I would encourage so many seniors, to think about, because I don't think many of the schools are making that a process yet, and they're going to need to, because the kids want to be able to take their work with them, and it is part of their portfolio for jobs and whatnot, and that's something they got to remember. This doesn't walk away with you. You're going to have to take it. And that's so
yeah,
important. Yep, and the videos too. Um, so we've kind of covered just about everything as far as what a teacher would want to consider. I was going to share that one Prezi that I feel is quite well done. Now, I think the title might scare people off a little bit because it's called Digital Image Use 101 for College Students. And I realize it was made by a professor in order to help his students understand how to deal with photos and music. But when I went through the Prezi, I thought this is wonderful for even all the way down to middle school because it really simplifies it. How are you going to use it? What do you need to include when you give a citation? What are you going to do to find these? It's really well done. So if you look on Prezi, you're going to find Digital Image Use 101. You probably could find it with just that, Digital Image Use 101. And it's by Kanako Iwaze, I think it is. But I find that it's quite succinct for anybody trying to figure this out. Okay?
yeah. It's just a matter of. I mean, there's resources out there. It's a little bit of a complicated issue because I mean, it's really the law comes down to what the judge determines. It's almost a case-by-case ruling.
Sure.
So it's hard to say this is definitely copyright infringement and this is definitely not.
Mm-hmm. So my rule of thumb to teachers is we just want to keep everyone out of court. We don't want anything to do with that.
But, it's good to understand it,
Mm-hmm.
to understand as much of the laws as you can, so that you make sure that you're respecting other people's property. And I think that's the
Exactly.
biggest takeaway is that if we as teachers show students that we don't respect other people's property, then they don't begin to understand other people's property, but then they don't respect
Mm-hmm.
the quality of work they produce either.
Right.
So
That's kind of a neat opportunity as well. I mean, I know on YouTube you can just mark something as all rights reserved, But if you were to create a drawing or even a written work and you wanted to get a copyright on it, to go through that process, which isn't difficult. I mean, you can apply for a copyright for things. But I tell students everything has a copyright. Just because it doesn't have the little C in the circle doesn't mean it doesn't have a copyright. And if it has an author and it has a date of creation, which anything digital does, and you can find it pretty easily, then it had to copyright. And by going that extra step of maybe going out and getting a Creative Commons license on it, you're actually making it more available for people. When you don't do that, it's already stamped with a C. You just don't see that. Yeah. So that could be a nice little exercise to have them go out and get a Creative Commons license and figure out which one applies and put it on something and put it out in the public.
A question for you. All the videos I produce, the content videos I produce for my class, I would put under Creative Commons because I didn't mind if other teachers used them with credit.
Right.
But there are still ways to use those videos without credit. What do you think about that?
I don't have any problem with it because I'm in an environment, and I think teachers are in an environment of share and share alike. They really like to share materials, but you also have the paid lessons and so forth that you can purchase online, and there are people out there making good money off of it. I have a colleague that is being paid to make video lessons by a company. So, you know, if there's so many of them out there that are free to use, is there going to be any room for the paid? And what's going to differentiate that? It's going to be the quality, right? It's going to be the aligned to the perfect standards that you need that goes directly with the textbook that you have. So that's going to be the difference. I don't have a problem with sharing it out, but I know other companies would like to make money, and they're going to have a problem with that.
So I know you want to get to a baseball game of some certain team that never seems to make it to the playoffs until this year. So
yes.
So we'll wrap it up. I think that's, you know, I don't have an outro. I'm kind of drawing a blank.
Well, just, you know, just teach the kids as a matter of fact that everybody owns it and it needs to be credited, and that's the bottom line, right? Give credit where credit is due.
Oh, and I guess one more thing I should say for giving credit doesn't always mean that you can use it.
True.
You'll see a lot of YouTube videos that say, "I don't own the rights to this, I'm posting it anyways." Well, when I even told my kids, that person's admitting they know they don't own the rights, so that's even worse than, you know.
Don't touch it.
I mean, you're admitting. You're admitting, I know I don't own the rights, but I'm going to put it up anyways. So just crediting who did it doesn't give you the right to use it necessarily. So.
That's true.
My
outro failed because... All right, yes, sir.
So we will reconvene again in a week. And for listeners, we'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.